Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fabulous Friday. We made it. We made it together. What a week. You look amazing, by the way. Even you grumpy people who don't like it, you look amazing as well. And let's remember that amazing and being amazing, looking amazing, doesn't always have to be polished. But anyway, we're going to get straight into the meat and potatoes. As I was asked a question yesterday by someone who I'd recently been speaking to, who are looking to build their own channel in a different niche, but we was talking about YouTube, talking about the content, so on and so forth, and they were looking at my content. And they looked into the Idaho 4 case. So fresh eyes, they hadn't seen it before, but they asked quite a confronting question because they were someone who, very much like the vast majority of us, they had a specific opinion based on what they had seen. And don't get me wrong, they hadn't seen everything. They had spent sort of an hour and 45 minutes looking at numerous videos, and they were primarily kind of seeing the likes of News Nation and Court TV, so on and so forth. And their conclusion was very, very rapidly, well, the guy did it. The guy did it. And what makes you think that he didn't do it? You know, what makes you think he's potentially innocent? Because what we have to appreciate, and what I had to appreciate, is he couldn't take my content into consideration because that was just my opinion, and that was my opinion on my interpretation of what information was out there. So his mindset was, okay, your content aside, because you're obviously going to influence people's thoughts on this case because you're passing your interpretation onto them. And for some people, you're going to go against the grain. Some people, you're going to go with the grain. And I get that. I get it. So I kind of was put in a position where I had to kind of double down and say, okay, this is exactly why I can't just jump on the bandwagon of Brian Kohberger's guilty. He did it. The rest is history, and all we're hearing in the background is noise and excuses being made to try and, I suppose, support the innocent until proven guilty. And, you know, I get that there's going to be people out there who are like, and I see it in the comments, you can't just pick a side. You sit neutral because it's the safest place to be. And it's not about sitting neutral because that's the safest place to be. I am not of a innocent until proven guilty just for the sheer hell of supporting innocent until proven guilty. There are cases where, yes, from a legal perspective, and if you believe in the constitutional rights, then you have to, you know, even the Rex Herman situation, some people would be steadfast in, well, they've got their guy, they've got him, and this is just a matter of time. He is indeed guilty, and we're now just waiting for the process. And the same with the Delphi case and what we've seen in Richard Allen. There will be people who are steadfast in the fact that he is a guilty man and we're just waiting for process. But it's not always that simple. I genuinely believe that even in the Delphi case, there are people who would potentially still believe that there is a risk of Richard Allen being convicted and he may not be the sole perpetrator in that case. I, for one, in the Delphi case, believe that Richard Allen is part of a massive problem, a massive network of problems. And, you know, that runs a lot deeper than just one single solitary dangerous man who just happened to do this crime and the rest is history. I don't believe it's that simple. And again, with the Idaho 4 case, my issue has never been Brian Kohberger not being involved in what happened with the Idaho 4 case. It's whether or not he was a sole perpetrator or a cog within a bigger problem, a bigger machine. And that's why I am more supportive of the innocent until proven guilty. It's not so much that I want Brian Kohberger to be found innocent and exempt from being part of what happened at 1122 King Road. It's, I feel that there is a potential that something else went wrong. And what we're seeing with the likes of the DNA situation, in my opinion, is a route to result. And what I mean by a route to result is what the defence are trying to ascertain is the exact route that was taken by the law enforcement in order to get to where we are today. Did they indeed investigate everything correctly? And it just, what they investigated led them to where we are today? Or was there a tip-off? Was there someone who pointed them in the direction of Brian Kohberger and said, this is the guy you need to look at. We know it's this guy. And then what they've done is they've built a case around him. And by doing so, that chain of command, that chain of the route to result has bits missing. So they are bringing in experts in their field to ascertain whether every single thing was done right. Now, does that mean that Brian Kohberger is guilty and what he's trying to do is get out on a technicality? Now, it doesn't necessarily, and I touched on this briefly yesterday. Now, not having an alibi does not automatically say that someone is guilty. It just means that they don't have an explanation that is going to be good enough because there is no proof, there is no evidence to say I couldn't have been here because I was here. But some may argue that if he would have come forward and had an alibi that didn't make you go, well, fuck me, that's terrible, then that would lead you to believe that it was potential that he could have been more guilty, because premeditation surely would have covered that element of your backup plan should stuff go wrong, to be able to say firmly, no, when this was happening, this is where I was. To be able to literally say, I was asleep, I was in bed, and you have to prove otherwise. You have to prove I weren't in bed and I weren't asleep. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and I was in bed. And again, the frustrating thing is, I look back to the phone situation and the fact that Brian Kohberger had, what we're led to believe, and what I think throws a spanner in the works, is the PCA would lead you to believe that he got up, got in his car, drove over with his phone, switched his phone off, and this was a very, very, how can I say, he knew what he was doing. This was a very focused period of time where he leaves the house, he goes, he does it, he turns around, he goes back home. And it makes it very, very clear that the prosecution is pushing this person on this night planned and executed this plan. And I think to myself, if someone had planned and executed this plan, why didn't they plan to just leave their phone at home? They knew they was going, they knew where they were going, they knew what they were going to do, they didn't need the phone. Why did they take their own car? Why did they leave at a specific time to go? Why did they do all these? And again, we've touched on this multiple times, but this is one of the reasons why I can't just swallow that whole narrative and accept it, because to me, it doesn't make sense. I do, as time progresses, see Brian Kohberger as too intelligent to make these fundamental errors. And does it happen? Does it happen? Yes, I guess it does. I guess it does. But give me an example of a crime that mirrors this crime with the same errors, with this same clever person making stupid mistakes. And not just one stupid mistake or one stupid error, but a multitude, a catalogue of issue after issue after issue that would put him here. And then the alibi for him to say, no, I was driving around. I was just driving around. I'm someone who drives around at night. And the supporting evidence of that in the background with multiple people coming forward and saying, no, he was. He wasn't someone who would go to bed at a certain time of night and get up in the morning. It wasn't that. Didn't happen. But there was one question that someone had emailed me about. And it was talking about Brian Kohberger returning to the scene the following day. Returning to the scene. And I think to myself, they raised a question and said, look, if you was involved in this kind of study, this field of study, and you heard that this had happened, wouldn't you be intrigued to go and have a look and see what had happened? And that was the only thing that kind of resonated with me as a problem, because I thought to myself, but nobody would have known at that point. the only people who would have known at the time with which Brian Kohberger headed, or apparently headed back over to Moscow, would have been at a time when it wasn't made public. So Brian Kohberger, in order to know this, would have had to have had access to the more inner circle social media. And I wonder what made him go over there on that day. And did he? Now, that has not been 100% clarified as accurate, but it is out there and it is something to consider. It is certainly something to consider. But, again, I digress. The issue that I have and the answer to the question is that why I can't 100% just crucify Brian Kohberger, throw him under the bus and be happy to say you've got the right guy, is that I continue to advocate for the fact that there are elements to this case that don't make any sense. And if things don't make sense, if you cannot look at all the pieces and make them fit, then you can't go one way or the other. Now, don't get me wrong, I would be as equally surprised if Brian Kohberger had nothing to do with this, and there was nothing whatsoever connecting him to the house or these people, whatever, than I would if he was guilty and solely did this on his own. Because I just feel that for him to be in a position where he's in, there must be a connection somewhere. Someone knows of him. Or that goes deeper, because someone, obviously, and I'm going back into the realms of the tinfoil hat, if he was indeed framed in some form of way, then someone had watched Brian and found him to be a good enough candidate for being framed. So was Brian Kohberger himself being watched by someone? And it just happened that this plan was a more broader execution of a plan. I don't know, and I don't want to go too far down into that. But no, for me, I just feel that there are too many questions, there's too many things that don't sit right. I feel that the gag order in its entirety is just bizarre. They just don't want anybody talking about anything. And every time the defence try and get something that is fundamental to a fair trial, they're just rebuffing it. They're pushing it back. They're pushing back on it. And you think to yourself, if you've got all your ducks in a row, then what difference does it make? And again, this is something that I've touched on multiple times. If they have a solid case against Brian Kohberger and they're absolutely adamant they have the right guy, then why not just give them everything and let the chips fall where they may? For me, the only reason that would be for them to behave in the manner with which they are is that they're not 100% confident. And why would you not be 100% confident if you are in this process and you are seeking the death penalty? Answer me. Please let me know down below what you think. But yeah, to be confronted with someone coming in and flat out saying, look, I think he's guilty. Why do you not? Why can't you see it? Because, you know, that's my interpretation of what I've seen. And there is so much media bias out there. And when I listened and again asked him questions as to, okay, what elements of this did you absolutely use to conclude that? Most of what he said was information that had not been confirmed via court documentations, but had been spouted off by the likes of News Nation and Court TV. And I still feel that there is an element of that out there, where people are still basing their belief of firm guilt on stuff that is not confirmed and is simply conjecture, speculation. Court case. Hopefully it will happen in October. There is nothing that absolutely shows us that it's not going to. I still feel confident that it still could go ahead. I'm sure there are people like Peter Tragus, for instance, who may not think so and think that it's more likely to be postponed. But time will tell. But where are you? Being honest. Being honest, again, I've asked this question and I am always curious. I want you to genuinely let me know down below what specific piece of information that you have heard in this case leads you to believe that Brian Kohberger is A, guilty, B, not guilty, or C, that you just don't know and you cannot make your mind up. You are not 100% sure. Let me know down below. Again, you look amazing. Thank you very much for watching me ramble, and I shall catch you all in the next one.